All right, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If everyone could mute yourself, that way when we get to the Q&A portion of the session today, you'll be able to unmute yourself. If I have to mute you, you will be I will have to unmute you and you may not get to speak. So mute yourself. Again, so happy that you're all here with us today. You know Dr. Akil, but I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that he is becoming well known as the heart healthy speaker. He's a physician, an author, septuagenarian athlete, a marathoner, mountaineer, triathlete, century bike rider, and a whole food plant-based vegan lifestyle advocate. I am so happy to bring him to you today to talk about this amazing topic of the gut microbiome. And without further ado, I mean, I could spend quite a bit more time telling you wonderful things about him, how he's still practicing medicine, going from Atlanta to Gaston, Alabama, twice a month generally. And his patients follow him everywhere. They come to see him when he's at the clinic. They call him on the phone. They actually are so excited with the care that he has been giving them. And he's sharing that energy with all of us today. So, Dr. Akil, it's your show. Take it away.
Okay, number one, thank you so very much, all of you, for coming. Uh, I have a particular closeness to this topic because of the testimonial. I think my heart disease and my diverticulitis were, in a way, responsible because of my dietary habits and my gut bacteria. So we will go through all that. Okay, let's start. We are now in a mode of, let me just put this off for a while. Okay, here. Now, we're going to talk about the gut microbiome. It is a very important subject, but very little understood. See, the microbiome is a diverse collection of bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoa, and whatnot. And you always have heard your elders say, you are what you eat. So very true. And Hippocrates, the father of medicine, rightly pointed out that all disease starts in the gut. And health is determined by the microbiota in the gut. To show you how important this gut is, and remember, we always have this feeling when we say, I got a gut feeling, I have the guts to do it. So let me tell you a little funny story about the gut. So here we are, a short story. One day the body parts were fighting with each other. Who is the most important? The brain said, I'm the most important as I control everything. The heart said, I'm the most important as my beating keeps the body going. And the liver came around and said, no, I'm the most important as I help in metabolism, excretion, detoxification. And finally, the gut said, I am the most important. I digest, I absorb, I reabsorb, I protect, I excrete, I produce hormones, vitamins, and they all laughed. The gut got angry and shut down. And within a few days, all the other body systems agreed it was the most important. So we embark on the Human Microbiome Project that says that the human body has 10 to 100 trillion microbiome, microscopic life forms living in it. We are not talking about millions, you're not talking about billions, we are talking about trillions. And as you can see here, you call this living. Now, we have microbes all over on our skin, our mucous membrane, external eyes, eyelids, in the ear canal, gastrointestinal tract, in our lungs, outer portion of the urethra where you pee, external genitalia, but the largest concentration of microbiome is in the gut, called the microbiota. We have so evolved with microbes for centuries. They not only communicate with us, but they communicate with each other. But we only recently began to understand the importance of these microbes. Say in the last 20 years. See, this is emerging science. This is evidence-backed. But we have only scratched the surface. There is so much more to learn about these microbes that can improve the outcome of our health. Now, you would be wondering, how did we study microbes in the past? This is 20 years back. I'm not talking about in the 18th century or 16th century. This is 20 years back when we believed that how did we study the bacteria? We actually took some, say, specimens, and then like from our sputum or from the wounds, and then we sort of put it under the microscope and we studied it. But we believed all the time that microbes were bad, causing infections, pneumonias, spreading a cold by touching or coughing, cavities caused by bacteria in your mouth, acne caused by skin bacteria, and on and on. But now with gene sequencing of microbiomes, we are getting to know a lot more. It is like 15 years we discovered a brand new phenomenon in the colon, the microbiota that we did not know existed. So far, our thinking was that the large intestine role was to absorb water and dispose of waste. But this is far from true. Now, 90% of your human cells are microbes. Can you believe that? Only 10% are actual human cells. So are we really more bug, bacteria than man? And as we said, there were 10 to 100 trillion microbes in our gut. So a human genome that they've done now is 23,000 genes. Now microbes, the microbiome, have 3 million genes. Weighs about in your gut 4 to 4.5 pounds. There are 300 to 1,000 different species of bacteria, and in some way they control almost all body functions. So we come to bacteria. Now remember, this is what we know. There is a good bacteria and a bad bacteria. I don't want you to remember names and all that, but just think about it. Your bifidobacterium, this one helps with digestion and supports the immune system. Your E. coli, which practically every woman in the audience would know because of the very common urinary tract infection that takes place, and that is because when there's certain strains of E. coli cause that infection. But generally speaking, E. coli actually helps in making vitamin K2, which helps in blood clotting. And then who has not heard about the lactobacillus? Everybody has had yogurt. So the lactobacillus is there, it breaks down food and makes vitamins. But we have the bad boys and bad gals over there too, the bad bacteria. And the most important and studied is your Clostridium difficile, which we will talk about a little more, which is because of the use of excessive antibiotics. And then you have the Salmonella, which causes food poisoning. And before it used to cause typhoid. The Campylobacter can cause loose, bloody stools with cramping. Again, so you have the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. We need to have a biodiversity and a balance. So here is your gut microbiomes. How are they located in your gut? See, think about this. In your mouth, your esophagus, your stomach, and your small intestine have very little bacteria. Why? Because the mouth and the stomach, the bacteria adapt with oxygen, which is there, and the acidity. The small intestine also is aerotolerant, because oxygen tolerant, plus it has acidity. So not very many bacteria. Or move down to the colon, where oxygen-rich environment now turns to no oxygen in the colon. Here is where most gut bacteria reside. In the colon, some of them are free-floating, some of them are in mucus, and some of them line very close to the lining of the large intestine or colon. So we go a fine balance of bacteria. So a healthy bacteria, it inhibits the bad bacteria and the pathogen growth. Now, it produces vitamin K, which we already said, and folic acid, folate. It does not produce vitamin B12 because actually the gut bacteria use up vitamin B12. And it produces the short chain fatty acids that carry sugar to the cells for energy and produces butyrate that keeps the inner lining of the intestinal health, preventing a leaky gut syndrome, which we shall talk about. Now, it stimulates and modulates the immune function, very important, regulates body fat storage so that we don't get unnecessarily very many fat cells. Helps tissue repair if you've got an injury or something, it helps in that. And finally, one of the most important things it does is stimulates the gut motility. The gastrointestinal motility is a key factor that governs digestion and absorption of nutrients and is regulated by various factors. But the most important one is your gut microbiome. And then you have the unhealthy bacteria. If they overcrowd, then you start getting sepsis, blood infection, your cortisol levels go high, inflammation, you get liver damage, you produce substances that can cause cancer, carcinogens, and then diarrhea and constipation. Now, for a minute, I want you to understand the cycle. What are the factors that can influence the composition, biodiversity, the function of the human gut bacteria? Let us start in the hospital. Humans as babies start out in a sterile environment. Once we go to the birth canal, billions of our mother's bacteria cover every single part of the body and starts our immune process. Therefore, C-section babies sometimes can get higher rate of asthma, immune disease, and even as far as some people have gone saying that even leukemia. Next is your breast milk. The breast milk has sugars that are meant to feed and support microbes, not the baby. And it helps to modulate and boost the immune system. It takes about 2 years till a healthy microbe community has formed. Next, we talk about is your diet. Talk about is your diet. So diet's rich in fiber, extremely important. Vegetables, fermented foods that were before the refrigerator came, they used to keep these foods in the winter and they got fermented. can lead to healthier microsomal profile compared to diets high in sugar, eggs, dairies, processed foods, and whatnot. Come down to exercise is able to improve the microflora diversity and composition, improves the good to the bad bacteria. Disease can cause problems with your microbacteria. And one important thing is age. There is an age-related change in the microbiome in the elderly. Diversity declines. The gut-brain axis and the cognitive skills decline. A possibility of getting a brain fog, Alzheimer's. Your nutrition absorption declines. Your medication effects takes over. And then we have the drugs. You know, the cortisone drugs, anti-inflammatory drugs, and most important, the antibiotics. Always remember, next time you take an antibiotic, think of one thing. Antibiotic kills the bad bacteria, but also kills the good bacteria. And then finally, we come to geography. Different locations expose individuals to different microorganisms in soil, water, and air. This can contribute to differences in the composition of more than others is the skin and the respiratory tract infections. So we go to our next slide, which will be the gut microbiota and modern lifestyle. And I want to this is important. Changes in the human ecology, like your human evolution, affected the composition of microbacteria. But a more radical change has occurred in recent decades. One of the most significant findings is that in developed countries, there has been a loss of certain species that colonized our bowels some decades ago, with the resultant loss of biodiversity of our microorganisms, of the microbiota. Now, why do you think that? Factors that have influenced this change in microbiota. Number one, water sanitation. Yes, it has its upside too. We don't have any cholera, dysentery, diarrhea, but we are not being exposed to these bacteria. That is why when you go out and sometimes there's a stream of water, I would love to put my hands in and drink that water. Increased performance of C-sections, more frequent use of antibiotics in preterm individuals, children, and adults, decreased breastfeeding, increased hygiene or widespread use of antibacterial soap and sanitizers, hypercleanliness. Let me take a moment over here. You see, with the COVID period that we had 2 to 3 years, we were all hypervigilant. We were sanitized everything. I remember sanitizing my produce even before I got it into my house. It was lying outside for a day or so in the sun, then I sanitized it and I brought it back. We wore masks to prevent. Fair enough. We were trying to avoid a virus that was deadly. But what happens? That now when it is over, or we don't really know, but this effect on chronic diseases will take place, and that will be shown a few years from now in the future. Now, I believe it's a catch-22 situation, because you believe that the Omicron virus, the different strain has come up again, especially in the South. So here is I am at a crossroads. Should I protect myself? Should I not protect myself? But remember, research has suggested that children growing up on farms or in rural environments where they're exposed to a wide variety of microorganisms may have a reduced risk of developing allergies and asthma. The phenomenon is part of the hygiene hypothesis which proposes an early exposure to microbes such as those found on farms can help modulate the immune system and reduce the likelihood of allergic and autoimmune diseases. And I just read a very nice book, Let Them Eat Dirt, Saving Your Child from an Oversensitized World. I don't remember the name of the author, but it'll come to me. And then, so that is it. See, even when we talk about in tuberculosis, when we did not have the antibiotics, what did we do? We sent them to sanatoriums. And why did some of them improve? A change of air, the exercise, the healthier diet. So think about all these things before you make a decision on how you protect yourself. The next is a question that always is asked, is the brain, the protective function of the barrier effect, how the microbiomes act with the host. You say there's a single layer of epithelial cells in the GI tract. This healthy gut epithelium prevents harmful bacteria and toxic substances to get into the blood. As simple as that. And things can cause a problem with this epithelium, then you're doomed. So here we talk about a question always asked by my patients, other people around me. The gut-brain axis. You see, the gut-brain axis consists of, your brain talks to your gut and your gut talks to your brain. It's a two-way traffic. Now, recent research has found that the gut microbiome is also involved in the gut-brain axis over here. Any miscommunication between these three can bring the range of health conditions such as irritable bowel syndrome, depression, anxiety, obesity, and autism. Let me give you an example. The ability of the brain to influence the intestinal microbes. You see, stress and digestion. When you're stressed and anxious, your brain sends signals that can disrupt the normal contractions of your digestive system, the peristalsis. This can lead to stomachache, bloating, and diarrhea. This can cause proliferation of your harmful gut bacteria. Again, think about it. The gut microbiomes produces a substance called serotonin, which in the brain influences mood and emotions. We get happy. If your gut bacteria are not healthy, this substance will not be produced, and you will get into depression and anxiety. So there is a complete circle around here. It goes from your brain to the intestines to your gut microbiome. So having said that, let's now go. We are so far with symbiosis. We are talking about how the balance, the biodiversity, the good bacteria, and all that. But dysbiosis in disease is an imbalance or disruption in the normal composition of the gut bacteria. This balance could be due to gain or loss of microbes, diversity of bacteria, overgrowth of harmful bacteria. And therefore, this proposed mechanism leading to disease is overgrowth of bad bacteria, inhibition of protective bacteria, can lead to immune activation, chronic inflammation, leading to tissue destruction and complication. And there you get the concept of the leaky gut. This is, again, a very important thing to understand, because a leaky gut has been accepted by traditional medicine, but what diseases it causes is still being studied by traditional medicine. So what is a leaky gut? The leaky gut syndrome. See, everyone's gut has an intestinal barrier, the epithelial layer, and are semi-permeable. The mucous lining of intestine is designed to absorb water and nutrients from our food into our bloodstream. But some people have increased intestinal permeability. That means that the guts let more than water and nutrients through. They leak. This can lead to microbes and toxic substances to be leaked in the blood. Now, causes can be, they are genetically predisposed, some of them. So understand this perfectly. Here is your epithelium. They prevent from anything toxic substances and bacteria getting in. It's a simple layer. But when you have certain things happening in your body, you start getting a leakage in your, here is your toxic and your bacteria getting into your blood. The causes can be genetically predisposed, low fiber diet, very, very, very important. If nothing else, you got to increase your fiber by, they said 38 grams, you should go to 60 grams and 70 grams of your fiber. Processed foods can trigger expansion of bacteria and cause a breakdown of the barrier. Vitamin A and D deficiencies can do that. Burn injuries can do that. Excessive alcohol consumption can do it. And certain infections, like people know now, H. pylori causes ulcers, can cause a leaky gut. So we go on to the dysbiosis we talked about in the diseases. You have the diseases of the gut, your malabsorption syndrome, your colon cancer, your inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, and your Crohn's disease, your diarrheal diseases, and the Clostridium difficile. But there are non-mucosal diseases also. These are your allergies, your atherosclerosis in your coronary arteries, pancreatitis, diabetes, obesity, liver damage, ulcer disease, fibromyalgia, and chronic fatigue syndrome are all due to this. So how do we know that we have dysbiosis? This is important. Frequent gas or bloating, cramping, urgency, mucus and feces, excessive amount, brain fog, anxiety, depression, oversensitivity to food, chronic bad breath or halitosis, loose stool, diarrhea, constipation, or a combination, irritable bowel syndrome, history of prolonged use of antibiotics, fatigue, low energy, excessive use of antacids for heartburn and reflux, and autoimmune disease like your thyroiditis, Hashimoto's, or your psoriasis, and finally, ongoing sinus congestions. Because let me tell you something, there are patients who come once in 5 years for a sinus congestion, but there are patients who come 5 times in a year for sinus congestion. Immunity. Gut microbiota may be responsible for that. So we go on to, so another question that people always ask me, SIBO, small bowel bacterial overgrowth. We already said that in the small bowel, very few bacteria are there because of the acidity, motility, and oxygen. But if you have a gastrectomy, post-surgical, or you have a gastric mucosa that does not produce any acidity, you can have a problem. You see, because irritable bowel syndrome occurs in 20% of the American population. It is a diagnosis of exclusion. When you can't get and pinpoint, you say you've got irritable bowel syndrome with your bloating, constipation, or diarrhea. But 60% of irritable bowel syndrome patients have SIBO, small bowel bacterial overgrowth. And what can that do? That can lead to fat malabsorption because bile salts are needed to digest fats and to break it down to those short-chain fatty acids. But these bile salts are broken by the harmful bacteria in your small intestine, result in incomplete digestion of fats, your carbohydrate, your protein, and your B12 absorption. Dysbiosis and disease, obesity. Recent evidence suggests that they play an important role in obesity. The composition of gut microbiota is shown to differ in lean and obese humans and to change rapidly in response to dietary factors. Gut microbes transferred from obese mice to regular mice dramatically increases the body fat, and the mice become insulin resistant and diabetic. Colonic bacteria, number 2, colorectal cancer, colon cancer. Very important because there is a lot of colorectal cancers. Colonic bacteria may initiate certain cancer-producing substances in meat and poultry cooked at very high temperatures. They secrete what is called as heterocyclic amines, or you don't have to remember all that, but it can cause colon cancer. Then you have the inflammatory bowel disease that we talked about. Your Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis is autoimmune. And finally, cardiovascular disease. I could have got this because of what I was dealing with my diet. Consuming animal protein that is considered high in choline and carnitine can cause certain bacteria to turn this choline into trimethyl, forget that, it's TMA, and that gets into your body as TMAO, which injures the lining of your blood vessels and enhances the formation of cholesterol plaques in your coronary arteries. How to fix or manipulate this gut bacteria? Yeah, you'd always want to know that, wouldn't you? So, is the answer antibiotics? It kills both good and bad bacteria. The answer is not probiotics in pill, tablets, or capsule forms. Why? An Israel study from Weizmann Institute showed that the probiotics slowed the recovery of the gut microbiome after a round of antibiotics. That means it took a longer time to come back to its natural self. The answer is dietary probiotics and lifestyle changes. Again, an extensive research was done with control studies where half the volunteers were given probiotics and half of them placebo. What they found was that the probiotics did not populate the gut. They just went in and went out. Now, probiotics is a 50 billion global industry sold in capsules, popsicles, cereals, and in infant formula and in dog food. Now I'm wondering, $50 billion of poop. In 2019, a study was done where a special mixture of nutrients containing chickpeas, soy, bananas, and peanuts repaired the damaged microbiome of malnourished infants. So the next thing is probiotics and prebiotics. This is important. You have the prebiotics and the postbiotics. The prebiotics are non-digestible foods, fiber, that stimulates the growth of healthy bacteria. Examples are many, but to give you a few: dandelion greens, artichokes, garlic, onions, leeks, asparagus, oatmeal, unripe bananas, vegetables, legumes, beans, whole grain seeds, nuts, peas, Brussels sprouts. This all comes into whole food plant-based diet. And then you have the probiotics. As I said, fermentation was not available. Refrigeration was not available. So they had fermented things in the past. So these are friendly bacteria, actually. They're living bacteria and yeast that are good for you, especially your digestive system. So you can have the kefir or kefir, or however you want to pronounce it, in your yogurt, which is made by fermented non-dairy or dairy milk. Watch for the sugar content in that. Miso soup, Japanese is saying fermented soy. Again, worry about the salt content. Sauerkraut, fermented chopped cabbage. Kimchi, Korean fermented vegetables. Do you know how we say cheese when we have somebody take our photograph? This is such an important food in the Korea that people say kimchi. So that is then you have the sourdough, where you have the fermented dough and kombucha. I'm very proud that one of my nieces in Mumbai has actually started this kombucha. Again, watch for the sugar in that. And finally, you have tempeh, which is fermented soy. Now, you breed bacteria depending on what you eat, whether it's fiber or leafy green vegetables, sugar and processed starches, greasy fries, butter and lard. By your diet, you will select bacteria that can metabolize that particular food. So if you are under a lot of stress, say, and you start eating burgers and fries and pizza, this is awesome for fast food-loving bacteria, which multiply and take space away from veggie-loving bacteria. And it sends signals to the brain to continue what it is doing. More fast food bacteria. This has eventual role in metabolic syndrome, in a role in obesity and diabetes. So now we come across the fetal microbiota transplantation. This is basically nothing but administration of fecal material from a donor, a healthy donor, to the intestinal tract, the colon of a recipient, in order directly to change that recipient's gut microbial composition and confer a health benefit. So you take from the donor, healthy donor, to the person who's suffering, and you can have a healthy outcome. So what was the history? The history was in 4th century, the doctors in China called it the yellow soup, because what they did, they dried or the fermented feces from healthy people, and then they made a broth. I mean, gross as it sounds, but this was there in the 4th century. In some countries, even today, maternal feces is inserted into the newborn's mouth to jumpstart the colon. And June 17, 2013, FDA approved the procedure for recurrent Clostridium difficile. It is a life-threatening infection in the colon that is very, very difficult to eradicate. But with taking the feces from a healthy person to a person suffering from Clostridial difficile, they found 92% to 95% success rate with 0 documented serious side effects. So this is a young lady from my city, Atlanta. After surviving a near-fatal car accident, Caitlin Hunter, she found herself fighting with this devastating bacterial infection in her colon that threatened her life. And this persistent infection was beaten because the donor was a mother. They took the pieces from the mother and transplanted into Hunter's intestine. And guess what? After the procedure, she says, "I am so happy. I'm totally cured." So this pieces, that microbiota, this transplant is likely to achieve widespread therapeutic benefit for a variety of diseases in the future. And therefore, we come to the end of our talk, where I'll give you my final thoughts and the take-home messages. We are superorganisms. will live with our bacteria, and they've adapted to live with us. Let us try and keep our bacteria healthy. They modulate most of our body functions, help to digest our food, help in gut motility, fight bad bacteria, make vitamins, hormones, nutrients, in many cases prevent chronic diseases like your blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, and modulate our immune system. Number two, when you eat food, remember, we are not only feeding ourselves, but also our bacteria. This is a Harvard study where animal-based versus plant-based diet. Participants ate animal diet as much as they wanted. Cheese, steak, butter, sausages, you name it. And stool samples showed bad bacteria growing in 5 days. Then they were switched to beans, grains, and veggies, and the bacteria started to recover. So if you are in a bad diet, like I was, change to a better diet so that you help your microbacteria gain some footing in becoming more biodiverse. Then third, increase the biodiversity of your bacteria. So how do you do that? Low biodiversity and imbalances of microbiota in the gut associated with human disease. High diversity is protective. Even if you need antibiotics and your gut bacteria are healthy, your gut bacteria will recover very fast. And you can increase your biodiversity of gut bacteria by eating a lot of fiber, as I said, most important, and eating a variety of plants. Again, we have the COVID, but you can still go barefoot in the park or your backyard. You don't have to put on your shoes and slippers to go backyard. Go barefoot. Shake hands with people. Give them hugs. Introduce more prebiotic and probiotic foods. And finally, folks, intermittent fasting. Just as your body needs to rest, so do your bacteria. Increase your friendly bacteria so that next time you get lonely or anxious, you have a lot of friends to fall back upon. Thank you.
Well, that
Hi
was
there.
wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Akil. You just laid that out in such a clear way of understanding it. And I am so excited to see if there are questions from any of those in the audience right now. I know that you're geared up and ready for that. So if you do have questions, raise your hand. Thank you, Harifa. If you'd like to unmute, okay, I see you there. Go ahead and unmute.
Yeah,
And
yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Lynn. Good afternoon, Dr. Akil Taher. This is Harita. So my question would be like for you suggested in the last slide more on the prebiotic and the probiotic foods to help for the bacteria, right? So being a vegan, I'm a plant-based. So what are the options you would suggest us?
Yeah, your plant-based, it helps you even more. What I talked
Mhm.
about in the probiotics is you can have the sauerkraut and the kimchi and your kombucha. You can also have the prebiotic, that was probiotics. You can have prebiotic of all the whole plant-based diet. So that has all this artichokes and all that garlic and onions and a lot of it, beans, legumes, that will definitely improve your gut bacteria.
Okay. So no other supplements are needed.
No, I do not believe in supplements at all, with the exception of two, B12 and vitamin D. They are the only supplements that I believe in, and I do not. Vitamin B12 definitely, even if you are taking prebiotics and probiotics, because the bacteria eat up the vitamin B12, even the good bacteria. So
Okay.
supplements in forms of pills and all that is probiotics, no. But if you're talking about taking probiotic foods, yes.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for that question.
Does anyone else have a question for the doctor?
Doctor, sorry, the supplements you advise are B12 and what was the other one?
Vitamin D. Jeff, how are you?
Hi, doctor. I'm fine, thank you.
As B12 and vitamin D are the only things that I advise. I do not take anything more than that.
Okay, thank you.
So go ahead, ask me anything you want. If I don't have an answer, I'll look it up and come back to you.
I have a question, but I don't know how to make it. I don't even see my picture on there.
I see you, but I don't see a
Okay.
picture.
Okay, that's what counts. My question has to, well, actually, I have two questions since we're on the subject already about the two vitamins that you recommend, B12 and D. I take both of those, but I also take a B complex. Is that not a good idea?
It's okay, because remember one thing, you can never have over this thing of vitamin B12, overtaking of vitamin B12. It passes off in the urine.
Right.
So
Okay.
it is not like vitamin D or something where you can get toxicity. Even vitamin D, I've never heard anybody get toxic on vitamin D. So B12 is okay, but if you're taking other B1 and all that, that's fine, not a problem.
Okay.
It's not going to harm you.
Good. The other question I was curious about was I've heard of people have C. diff that follows from being on an antibiotic, as you've referenced, that when you take an antibiotic, all of your bacteria are destroyed, good and bad. And I had a friend from my dance class who ended up with C. diff, and he was in the hospital for a very long time. I don't know what the treatment was because he moved away and I have lost touch with him, but I'm wondering why you can't just repopulate your gut with the healthy foods you described earlier, doctor, like the bananas, peanuts, and soy and chickpeas. Why do you need to have a fecal transplant?
You see, excellent question. The thing is that it may take a little bit time. It is a very devastating disease. It can kill you. And this is a thing that is done, which can cause, which I showed you, that lady, young lady, 20 years, who is in Atlanta. I mean, within a day, within a couple of days, you're okay. And you are getting transplant from the feces. We are not in the 4th century China where we are asked to have the broth. But I think it would take a little longer. You can try it out. If you take that along with your regular diet, say, for example, you are a heavy meat eater, and then you want to use the probiotic and the prebiotic, it may take longer. You will confuse your microbiomes. Here you have the healthy microbiome that can immediately take over and help you. So that is this thing that a lot of people are getting this fecal transplant and doing superbly well, as you saw that young lady.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. And Dr. Akil, Jan Carson has a question for you.
Yes, Jan, go ahead.
Hi, thank you
Jan,
very
how
much.
are you?
Thank you for your presentation. I had a question about smoothies and our gut biome, and also just in general. I know a lot of the plant-based physicians advise against smoothies, and I recently read that you're kind of famous for your smoothies. So can you help us with that, cardiovascular health and also microbiome?
Let me tell you something, Jan. If I were to, the things that I put in my smoothie, if I were to eat it and chew it and digest it, it would take me about 2 days. So my point is that even though you have to chew your things and you can do it morning, afternoon, evening, it is much better. I agree. But short of that, I make a smoothie which has helped me tremendously, Jan. Because remember one thing, how did I get the heart disease in the first place? It was with my bad diet, my microbiota, plus that microbiota caused the TMAO, the
Right.
carnitine in my meats.
Mhm.
That caused me the cholesterol plaques in my coronaries. So my point is that I make a smoothie. If anybody is interested, I definitely put the ginger and what else do we have? I put like bananas a lot, 1 or 2 bananas, pears. I put grapes at times. I put beets. I put leaves like, for example, cruciferous, kale, and spinach, and all that. And then it is fantastic. Blueberries, raspberries.
Turmeric.
There's
Sounds
natural
delicious.
sweetness.
Sounds great. All right. Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Not at all. Not at all. Lovely.
Awesome. We have a question now from Sherry Silk.
Hi, Sherry. How are you?
Hi, thank you. I'm well. Thank you for this talk. I have a friend who's had H. pylori for a long time, and the doctor put her on the antibiotic protocol, and she was pretty sick from it, and it didn't help. So then she went to eating foods, when you Google and it says these foods are more helpful, and she went for probiotics. And then she still has the H. pylori. So she tried 2 more times to go on the antibiotic protocol. She was violently sick. And I was wondering, I had recommended to her, try more plant-based eating, but I don't know if that's enough to change things with what's going on in her gut. And I didn't know what you recommend. Thank God she hasn't gotten any ulcers. And she has less gastric distress, but it's still there.
A lot of people harbor, thank you for that question though. A lot of people harbor H. pylori without having the ulcer. Now, this is once you go in a primary care doctor's office and they test you in the blood for H. pylori, that H. pylori will be positive for the rest of your life. Unless you do a breath test in the gastroenterologist's office, it is going to remain positive for life. Number 1. Number 2, this is totally what I'm against. You're using so many antibiotics that you are destroying the acidity of your gut, of your intestine. If she does not have any problems, she should turn, in her case, turn whole food plant-based, use a lot of prebiotics that I've talked about, use a lot of probiotic foods, and see, I'm 100% sure. I mean, I don't know the complete history of this person, but you are bound to get better. Because H. pylori not causing an ulcer, lying there are a lot of people who are there. If you check my H. pylori, it's positive. So that does not mean that I have to start taking antibiotics, because it kills your H. pylori, but it kills all the good bacteria too.
Click on more.
So I think that you have the number 1, 2, 3, whole food plant-based diet if you can, or at least be cut back on your meat, eggs, and dairy, and sugar, and all that. Number 1. Number 2 is have the prebiotics and the probiotics. Number 3 is your exercise. Number 4 is a good sleep testing. All this will cure your tummy problems. I had a lot of tummy problems, trust me. Twice perforated my diverticulitis, perforated twice my colon. And they were going to cut me open. But today, it is in the back burner. I have no problems at all. Touch wood, so far.
Well, thank God for your good news for yourself, and thank you for your advice for my friend.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And now Uday has a question.
Good afternoon, Dr. Saab. Just wanted to share one quick recipe. This actually helped me get my Crohn's under remission, and this was called kvass. It's a beet You grate the beets and then you ferment it for
No.
48 hours and then you drink it, then refill the water again, and then you drink it. And this is a very simple concoction. I'm sure you're aware of that. Just wanted to share it on this forum.
More power to you, Dave. That is going to help you. It's beet, right?
Yeah.
So why not? Beet also has a very powerful this thing on your blood vessels.
Yes.
Increases the nitric oxide too.
Yes.
Dilates your blood vessels.
Yes.
So
You
it helps
told me
the
that.
coronary arteries too.
Absolutely. That was your advice for me when I visited you last as well. Now my question is regarding the sequence of prebiotics and probiotics, doctor. I have heard that there is if somebody wants to repopulate that colony of bacteria in their gut, there is a process or a sequence, time-bound sequence of activities wherein you go for a period of time on prebiotics and then ingest probiotics. Is that true? Do you recommend that?
This is very much in the early stages.
Uh-huh.
So I don't have much idea on that, but if it comes out, we will all look, because see, remember, this is very new science, 20 years.
Mhm.
So we are trying to figure out more and more about it. There will be so many things that come out in the future. As I said, this fecal transplant or other things may come out and help in a lot more diseases than we think about.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Shoot away.
Dr. Tahar,
Yes, how are you, Paul?
I'm great. Thank you for this. Very informative. Is there a test for this to see if your bacteria is bad enough to have this FMT procedure?
Yes, they do the fecal test on that, but I don't know which centers would do that for you, but there is a test. But
Okay.
I'm not really aware. I will look into it and get back to you. How about that?
That's fine. Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other questions?
So happy to see Jay Chinoy and Aline and wow. Francine is there, Madhvi is there, wow. Ramarao, yes. How are you, sir? You're okay? Well, anyway.
He may not hear you.
Yes. So this is any more questions, or we?
It does not look like there's any more questions. I've checked the chat. We're looking good. Everyone says many thanks. Thank you for the helpful information. Great talk. Excellent. Very helpful. So thank you, Dr. Akil. This has been amazing. I loved the fact that I believe that knowing about the gut microbiome, you covered so much, and it was so relatable and easy to understand. And we're going to ask that each of you share this video with just one person. When it comes up on the website, you will get an email and you'll have the link to be able to share it. And if you would do us the favor of sharing it, we can get more people to understand that how important caring for our gut microbiome really is. So unless there are any other questions, we are right at the top of the hour and we will wrap it up. Look forward to seeing each of you next month. And our topic is going to be, gosh, it just left my brain.
I know about it, but let's just wait on because I don't want to do the diabetes on the way what the general medical science does. I want to do it in a different way.
Well, you let the cat out of the bag by saying diabetes. So Dr. Akil is going to talk about type 2 diabetes, but not in the way that you might think. Again, he is so just adamant about making sure that we all understand this information, that it's easy to understand, and that we walk away with some real things that we can do, that we're fortified and encouraged and empowered to take good action towards better health. So if you know anyone that is affected by type 2 diabetes, invite them to be at next month, the September's event, and you'll get that in an email shortly as well. We did have a question. Where did you go? Who was that? Was that you, Robina Barlow, or?
I see that question in the chat, Ms. Lynn. It's in the.
What is the question? If people want to listen, I don't mind. I can stay as long as people have questions.
So the question is about what brand is recommended for vitamin D and B12.
I think, you can, ergocalciferol is one, D2 should not be taken, D3 should be taken. Anything that you take from Whole Foods or other places, any supermarket can have it. And you have to take about roughly in the vicinity about 1,500 units to 2,000 units. Check your vitamin D regularly. If it is, it'll never be too high. So if it is normal, then continue with that. But lot of things are attributed, diseases are attributed to vitamin D deficiency. And I believe that we should be taking a lot of you should be taking vitamin D and B12 the same. You take so many 2,500 units or whatever. But the whole idea is that I believe that you should take D3, and D3 comes in a vegan form if you're so particular about it. I see a lot of my brother-in-law was here. Yes, he disappeared suddenly. Maybe he's gone to have a hamburger.
A Beyond Burger.
Okay. So, and then I really appreciate all of you coming. Melinda, all of you, Angela, Faiz, and Elaine, and Ramarao, and Francine, of course, is very, very supportive. Robina, that's lovely to see you too. And so I shall.
Yes, our next event, Dr. Akil's next event, is on Friday, September 29th at 12 p.m. Eastern. So you will see a few emails come along that you can forward out. You'll also see some things on social media that you'll be able to also share. And if you have any questions, feel free to email us or send us a note through Facebook Messenger. And we are so grateful that you were here today, and we will see you for the September Talk with the Heart Healthy Doc in the Doc's Corner.
Yeah, thank you, guys. See you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.